Well, welcome you back. Now, we just went over Lot's story in Genesis a little bit and kind of talked about a little bit of the context of how his life was. And then we compared it to Abraham's life and why Abraham's prayer saved Lot's life. And also talked about his wife turning a pillar of salt. And we talked about just the different matters of Lot's whole situation. It was thinking about Sodom and Gomorrah was an economic explosion of like great quality economic productivity, and Lot got caught up in it. Made it easy, and basically the downfall of his situation is that he was trying to, basically give more information of why he wanted to stay, but yet he had basically was forced out of Sodom and Gomorrah. And it's just, basically look at Abraham's life of, being more abundant through God's life, and now he had prepared a future of his people's lives. And of course, Lot's story, unfolds to where his family and his people end up becoming the actual enemies of, the basic future Israel that is created with the Ammonites and Moabites. But those situations really, in context, kind of give you a little more clarity of that. But we're going to talk about today is how Jesus explained Lot's life and the near future of what Revelations really has to do with. So Lot's story, was one of Jesus' own chosen end-time illustrations. But this connection isn't, speculative; it's intentional. And God uses Lot's story to reveal what the world will look like, how believers will live, and also how judgment and rescue will unfold just before the end. Now let's walk through this carefully and clearly. Well, Jesus explicitly links Lot to the end times. He says here in Luke 17, verses 28 through 30, it says, likewise, as it was also in the days of Lot, even so it will be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. Jesus places Lot's days alongside of Noah's days. Both are end-time templates. Lot's story is prophetic, not just historical. Basically business as usual. Before sudden judgment, Jesus highlights something surprising. He talks about they ate, and then they drank, and they bought, they sold, they planted, and they built. There's two things he didn't talk about. Notice what he didn't emphasize first, which is sexual immorality and violence. So in Revelation, the end times won't feel apocalyptic. They'll feel normal, prosperous, and distracted, just like Soddam. Economic prosperity, culture confidence, moral blindness, no fear of judgment. Judgment came the same day Lot left. Lot as a picture of the end-time believer. Peter gives us a crucial insight on this. He said God rescued righteous Lot, who was distressed by the depraved conduct of the lawless. And this is found in 2 Peter chapter 2, 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 7. He said God rescued righteous Lot, who was distressed by the depraved conduct of the lawless. Lot is called righteous, yet deeply compromised. In time parallel, many believers will believe, so they are saved, spiritually uneasy, morally pressured, culturally embedded. And Lot represents believers who love God, but live too close to Sodom, are distressed, but not fully separated. So angels pull out Lot. Divine extraction before judgment. So in Genesis 19, Lot hesitates. The angels physically grab him and pull him out. The Lord being merciful to him. This all happens in Genesis 19, verse 16. So the Lord being merciful to him. So prophetic insight. God removes the righteous before unleashing full judgment. And this aligns with 1 Thessalonians 1:10. So Jesus who rescues us from the coming wrath. And you also find in Revelation 3:10, kept from the hour of trial. Noah entering the ark before rain. Lot's rescue is proceeding for divine deliverance, not endurance under wrath. So do not look back. End time attachment warning. Jesus directly references Lot's wife in his end time discourse. Remember Lot's wife. This warning sits inside teaching about sudden separation. One taken, one left, and the urgency. So in the last days, attachment to wealth, comfort, your lifestyle, culture will prevent many from responding when God calls them out. Looking back, loving when God is judging. In sudden separation, one taking, one left. And Jesus continues, 2 women will be grinding together. One will be taken and the other left. And this is found in Luke chapter 17, verse 35. Let me repeat, it says 2 women will be grinding together, working, living however they do. One will be taking and the other will be left. And the mirrors. Lot leaving, neighbors staying, and Noah entering the ark, others remaining. When judgment doesn't fall gradually, it divides instantly. There's no time for negotiation, preparation, repentance after that signal. Sodom's sinned, and the end. Time, moral climate. Ezekiel clarifies Sodom's core sins: pride, excess of food, prosperous ease, and do not aid the poor and needy. This is found in Ezekiel 16:49. So basically their pride, excess of food, prosperous ease, and they did not aid the poor and needy. That defines a culture. A very highly sin. That sexual sin was the fruit, not the root. An end times reflection. A society that is proud, prosperous, indulgent, self-focused, hostile to holiness. This mirrors a modern culture, precisely. So Lot barely escapes a sovereign warning. Lot escapes with no wealth, no city, no influence, no legacy. And Paul echoes this in the New Testament. He himself will be saved, but only as through fire. 1 Corinthians 3:15. So 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 15 says, he himself will be saved, but only as through fire. Some believers will be saved, but nothing to show for their lives. Salvation does not equal reward. The big end times picture God is revealing. Throughout Lot, God reveals judgment is real and intimate and imminent. Normalcy is deceptive. Attachment is dangerous. Mercy still rescues. Delay is costly. Separation is required. The choice before us, Abraham or Lot in the end times. Believers will fall into two categories. Be like Abraham, watching, interceding, living as pilgrims. Lot being distressed, compromised, secured and rescued at the last moment. Both are saved, but only one lives ready. Lot's story is not meant to scare. It's meant to awaken. Jesus didn't say, fear Sodom. He said, remember Lot. On our last little section here, it says if you want, I can basically talk about how Lot's life to be remembered and not to fear Sodom.